Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Merton.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, the point of sale market, would you say it's probably big?
Yeah, it's pretty big. Point of sale, lots of people buy stuff. It kind of keeps the whole economy going. Yeah, it's pretty big.
Yeah,
I'd say.
you go to a place, you want to buy something, and somebody's got to figure out how to, make that transaction happen.
Oh,
so,
absolutely. Yeah.
Pretty big for us in our world and our resellers, obviously.
Kind of a big thing around here, no doubt about it. Yeah.
Here's a couple
But
stats
expanding.
I found. It is. Well, and here's a couple stats
There you
related
go.
to that. Grandview Research had a 2020 survey that said the POS, first of all, the software market currently, or as of 2020, $9.3 billion, expected to expand to $18.1 billion by 2027.
Just the software alone?
Just the software side.
All right.
Hardware market is expected to reach $66.3 billion by 2025.
That's a lot of hardware, dude.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
So lots of opportunity that's out there,
Yep.
but that also means there's a lot of competition.
True.
And we know that from our world, which is why we've brought in an expert with us today. We have Jeremy Julian from CBS with us today to
Got
talk
a
a
good
little bit
one
about
today. Yep.
the POS side of things and get into the marketing side of aspect of it. How do you differentiate yourself in that market when there's so many solutions out there?
Yep.
And there's also a lot of complacency. There's a lot of retailers and and hospitality folks that may be like, well, this is working fine.
Yeah.
Why would I make any?
It's still on
changes?
Windows 95. It hasn't broken yet. What's the problem?
Exactly. So we're going to talk about what the market does look like right now, why people are hesitant to change, what makes that happen, and then maybe he'll get into a little bit of not, without giving away his secret sauce about how they kind of approach it and what where you need to look for differentiators. We'll talk about the free POS systems that are out there and what that
Full
really
air
means.
quotes again on that.
Full air quotes, yes, definitely, and maybe get into some trends in POS also. So,
Yeah, it's a good
I think
one.
we got lots of stuff to tackle.
Yes,
with
sir.
them.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. It's time for us to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned, our guest today, Jeremy Julian, is the COO for Custom Business Solutions, aka CBS. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate having you on. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your day-to-day role there at CBS.
Well, thanks for having me. And as we were talking about pre-show, it's always fun to be on this side of the mic. It's always kind of weird because, as you guys know, I host my own podcast called the Restaurant Technology Guys. But that's not what I get to do on a daily basis. I run a technology company that supports the restaurant industry, and so we're one of those VAR ISV hybrids that started as a traditional VAR selling hardware and software, produced by other people, and then eventually became an ISV ourselves. So for those that don't know what ISV stands for, because half the time I use these acronyms and my own team goes, what does that mean? We wrote our own point of sale software about 10 years ago and have been taking that to market for, like I said, about 10 years. Really focusing on hospitality and restaurant, the restaurant vertical.
Nice. I love the fact that you get both sides of it. You understand the hardware side of it. You also understand the software side of it because, obviously we have a lot of VARs that play very well on the hardware, but they're always looking to partner up on software or not quite sure what to do there. Part of the reason we brought you on also, I actually, reached out to you about joining us at VARTech for our creative marketing tactics session. James Cordy recommended you because, we thought, hey, having someone on that POS perspective might help also. Jody was fantastic on the supply chain ADC side of things, but we thought, hey, it's so important to understand that marketing in the world of POS is so much different and has an entirely different track because of that massive amount of, competition and products and services that are out there right now. So let's start off by, from your perspective, what does the POS market look like right now?
I think it's gotten more convoluted as time has gone on. And again, I know you talked about it kind of in your intro of tech adoption and the Windows 95. Oh, it's not broke, don't fix it. It's been interesting because there's definitely been an acceleration of people testing stuff because of COVID. There's definitely been more people adopting different solutions that, quite frankly, for years we would tell them this is stuff you need to be thinking about, and they wouldn't. But it's by convoluted, I think that the lines have blended from what used to be traditional point of sale and what used to be e-commerce, what used to be traditional point of sale, kind of brick and mortar, to the kiosk or, mobile app on your phone. Who produces that software? How does it get in? Third-party delivery. So the amount of a breadth of what a POS reseller needs to deal with, and quite frankly, a restaurateur needs to deal with today, has expanded exponentially and only accelerated with COVID.
I would agree with that. I mean, we talk about the tech stack, right? In the need to be able to walk in with a really kind of a full deck of options, because end users, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a retail establishment, let's focus in on restaurants, are, they're not immune to what's happening in the world. They're getting asked by their customers to do all kinds of things, from, maybe traditional, what we could call now loyalty programs and stuff like that, to some of the innovation that's happening on curbside and being able to enable checks and stuff. It just, a lot is happening in the space. So having that tech stack, kind of lined up is critical. And what I love about NorthStar or CBS NorthStar is that you guys have a lot of different partnerships as well. I mean, I know you mentioned that you developed your own software 10 years ago, but just a quick peruse of your site, you guys have a lot of great partnerships to enable your tech stack, right? So that you can enable
Absolutely.
Right, what's happening there. So that partnering is critical a phase of where we're at right now.
Well, and I think so much of it's driven by consumer demand with the restaurateurs. So consumers are expecting to be able to jump on their phone and order a pizza on their way home. Some of the biggest of the big, the Domino's, the Pizza Huts, those guys have paved the way. The Starbucks of the world, Chick-fil-A. I think you guys are probably, those are kind of the de facto that everybody's trying to chase. And then you get the small to medium sized brands that can't compete with that unless they have an offering that's very similar. And so we, as a partner, and we'll get into it in a little bit on kind of how we sell and how do we market to our customers, but really meeting not only the consumer demands, but then that restaurateur is saying, I'm missing out on sales, or we're educating them into a place that says, you're missing out on the opportunity to talk with your guests, whether it's loyalty, whether it's online ordering, whether it's third-party delivery, whether it's any of these different modalities that are coming through and quite frankly have been around for a significant amount of time. 10 years ago, you probably found 50% of the restaurants in your town didn't even have a website. Now you would laugh if they didn't have a website, and if they didn't have a Google profile, and if they didn't have a Yelp profile, and if they didn't have somebody managing that, you would chuckle. Now it's kind of, they've got to be on those third-party delivery platforms, whether they partnered with a single one or they partnered with multiples. They've got to be on those third-party delivery platforms, because there's times, even 5 years ago when they came out, I got introduced to DoorDash 6.5 years ago. We've got a 6-year-old, and somebody sent us a DoorDash gift card. And at the time, we were like, what in the world is this DoorDash thing? And quite frankly, I didn't even know what it was. Ended up ordering through DoorDash, and now, you guys chuckle about it, but you would be remiss to not even realize that that's a thing out there. But 6 years ago, it didn't exist. And now every single brand needs to have some presence on that. And so I know I kind of riffed for a little while there, but I think it's a lot of it's driven by consumer demand. And if you don't meet where the consumers are going to be, then you can't sell food, and you can't sell retail items to those consumers, because they expect it from everyone, even though these big brands have $1 million budgets to go roll out something as small as an update to their app.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Jeremy. Sorry, because I think just to throw in there, if it's an establishment that's still around now, that has made it through, what we have gone through with the pandemic, they are already adjusting to the need to have some of these new items, as a part of the point of sale, or as a part of their business, as a part of the environment that their customers are, the whole customer experience that we talk about. So it's that adaptation thing, I think, Jeremy, that you were touching on, that, we're starting to see that a lot more, right? There's just the need to adopt a lot of this newness, or at least kick the tires, figure out how that's going to work in their world. I can't imagine. There's a lot of questions around that front.
Yeah, no doubt. I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that, hey, a few years back, you were probably telling folks, hey, you might want to pay attention to this whole, online delivery thing and other options for, delivering your food and getting food to people and other places that they can pay. And I'm sure there was plenty of people that frustrating, like, nah, we're fine, we're good. And all of a sudden, in the middle of a pandemic, they're all running to you, and you're like, oh, yeah, see, look what you're doing now.
Yeah.
So, you've kind of hit on that a little bit here. Obviously, there was a clear demand that drove a lot of change over the last couple of years. So, what about the hesitancy part of it, though? Like, before all of this, when they didn't have something forcing them to make these changes, why were so many, especially restaurants and retailers, so hesitant to make changes to their point of sale, to make any kind of upgrades, to accept what you were telling them was coming, whether they like it or want to hear about it or not? Why are they so hesitant about that?
It's funny you asked that question, because I was recording a podcast on Friday with a restaurateur, and I asked that specific question. I said, why now and why not then? And really, there's a two-part answer that I consistently hear from our clients. And I think prior to that, prior to the forcing of these things, if either one of you guys have ever worked in a restaurant, it's low margins, it's long hours, you're working really hard for little money, you're doing it for the love of hospitality, and quite frankly, you don't have capacity to go look at all of these things. And again, especially if you're not digital native, if you came up in an era where you make good food, you deliver it on time, you deliver it with a smile, people keep coming back. So I think that was probably the biggest thing prior to the pandemic. The second is and I think you guys live this world, is there's a lot of ISVs that make a lot of promises but don't actually deliver on the business proposition that they may have sold. And so I think there's a lot of people that are reluctant to jump into new tech until you look at the adoption curve, and you kind of have those people that are the first 10%, the really early, super early adopters, and then the early adopters, and then the early majority, and then the late majority. Most restaurateurs kind of in that bulk, and if you can't get out of the initial that initial phase. And I remember having many arguments with CFOs and CTOs early in the days of third-party delivery of you've got to figure out how to do this well prior to the pandemic, because and they would argue with me, oh, they're taking so much of a percentage of our profits and blah 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 blah. We'd have these dialogues, and I'm like, but if you understand that you've got certain fixed costs within your restaurant, you've got to pay rent, you've got to pay food costs, you've got to have certain things to open the doors. How do you increase four-wall economics is kind of the phrase that I had dubbed on my podcast, is how do you increase the economics within the four walls of your business so that you can utilize the space to be able to get, and now you see things like ghost kitchens, and Chili's has rolled out this wing concept, and they're doing $250 million a year in wings out the back of a Chili's after they already have it paid for through the Chili's brand. And so I have a tendency to ramble, and I apologize, but I think it's important for our listeners to understand that this is why, and your job as a VAR, your job as a solution provider, is to really help them understand this and overcome these objections.
Let's dive a little bit in one area there, Jeremy, that you touched on. It's the whole, when the pandemic first hit, and right, I think you're dead on about what adaptation was looking like. Prior to that, very slow. People had all kinds of reasons to say no, but pandemic hits and boom, it's like DoorDash, Uber Eats. They couldn't expand fast enough.
Right.
If they wanted to stay in business, they had to just bite the bullet and do that. Some of them begrudgingly, right, because of the high price of doing business with a DoorDash. So are you starting to see a little bit of a sway back? I know that you guys have an online component of your software. So are you starting to see some restaurateurs saying, you know what, okay, we got the Uber Eats thing, we got the whatever, the DoorDash going, but we want to amp up our online presence so that we can control that customer experience, number one, a little bit better through online, and number two, enable them to do at least takeout ordering through the online experience. Maybe not delivering it to their door, but the takeout. Let's dive a little bit there. What are you seeing, Jeremy, there?
Absolutely. And I think it some of it comes back down to brand size. Some of our largest brands, they just want it to go through one channel, but they've negotiated down, their rates so low with these third-party delivery aggregators that they're fine to just, it's going to cost them almost the same to do it native versus, but most of the mid-sized to smaller operators are trying to drive people towards their own site because the cost is lower, especially for takeout. And again, we'll talk about it when we get into some of the future thoughts that I have, but they're definitely doing that because the other piece that I think, and not to bury the lead, but I think we're going to see a next level of innovation where figuring out who the consumer is, because right now when you're with third-party delivery, you don't know who your consumer is as a restaurant brand. They own that customer data. And so restaurants getting first-party information about who's dining with them is going to be critical to their success going forward. And I think they're going to need to be able to communicate with those people. And I think it's a huge piece. But absolutely. And again, our early adopted tech companies all had their own website, either using our product or some other third party that they could get the data. And they started there, and then they kind of were able to embrace the third-party delivery marketplaces like DoorDash and Grubhub and Uber Eats.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's such an important message there too about once you've given customers something that they like, not trying to dial it back and pull it back away from them, or think that you're going to be able to just step back and I feel like I've seen this lately where, you know, we got comfortable with the whole door dashing and you know, my wife and I love that, you know, it's better any day at the end of a long day than having to pack up a 4-year-old in the car and try to go out to a restaurant and eat there and hope that he's in a good mood and that it's a pleasant evening, all that stuff. Why would we do that when we can just have the same kind of food, the same relative quality of food delivered at our door? But I've also feel like I have noticed in the last few months or so, especially as, you know, all these restaurants have reopened and they're trying to drive people inside again, I feel like sometimes, and this is not a lot of not all of them, but a few restaurants, like the quality of what you're getting on the delivery side has suddenly started declining, where it seems like it's taking longer for them to get the food. It's getting to you. It's been packaged badly. It's not as tightly packaged and as thoughtfully done as it was before. You know, orders are kind of messed up a little bit more. It's a little more sloppy than it was. And I kind of start to wonder, like, is this because on their end, they're thinking, well, hey, I've got customers here again. That's what I'm concerned about, this delivery thing, whatever. I'll just throw stuff in there and they're not going to come here and complain about it. That is obviously an absolutely wrong mentality.
Yeah, right.
And I'm going to assume that most restaurants aren't necessarily doing that. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a few, you know, that may be thinking to themselves, well, you know, whatever. It's, you know, this isn't the important part of our business anymore. It still is, because people still want that. And you are losing a lot of potential revenue if you're not still catering to those customers who've found this out and decided, hey, this is my preferred way to get food now. Right?
Right. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I'll give you guys a true story from my own family. Anybody that knows me knows I talk about my family and my kids a lot because I got 4 kids and so life is full at home. But there was my oldest son's favorite restaurant before we moved out of Southern California. We used to go there often. But one of the big challenges that restaurants faced is when the majority of your clients, 80+% of your clients, were walking in the door to either order takeout or stand in line and go through the line, go through the queue to get their food, or you know, they're sitting at the host stand to wait to get a table. You knew what the expectations were. When you walked into a busy restaurant, you knew it was going to be slow. Unfortunately, when you get to digital, there is no line of sight for the restaurant as to what's coming in or for the guest. And so to your point, John, like what you expect that level, and when it was all focused only on, you know, takeout and delivery, it was easy. When I was only focused on dine-in, it was easy. Try and blend those two and try and staff for it. Try and manage your expectations. Try and manage your ticket times. You don't have a throttle. There's a throttle when you have a 150-seat restaurant. The throttle is, I only have 150 people there. I can only have 150 people ordering food at any one time. But the host stand manages that, and over 50, 75 years that we've had sit-down dining, they've been able to manage the timing on that. When you open it up to digital, and I think very similar in the retail world, how many times have you guys gone on and something's out of stock? You know, you go to order something, and again, supply chain challenges even more so now, but you go on and you're like, oh, I used to be able to get this in a day. And now it's not there because they can't forecast those things. It truly is the hard part. And that story, we won't go back to that brand because we had 2 terrible experiences. We stood in line, we waited, and me as a restaurant tech guy realized that they had gotten overwhelmed with digital orders and their kitchen couldn't produce our food because we were the 50th or 60th order for that kitchen to produce, even though we're standing there. Even though we're standing in this fast casual restaurant waiting for our food, we will not go back to that brand. I personally love it. So when I go back to Southern California, I will go back without my wife and kids. But absolutely, it is a challenge that restaurateurs are going to need to face, especially as consumers and guests are looking to interact with your brand in the way that they want to interact with it, not the way the brand wants to interact with it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think some of it comes down to staffing. You know, you hear about that. And to Jeremy's point, though, I mean, when you think about it, you know, if the restaurant was originally conceived to just be a dine-in only, then now they've pivoted, to use that overused word, to enable, you know, online pickup, curbside, all this other stuff. Well, and now that everything's kind of coming back, you know, you just have this perfect storm and not enough labor to facilitate it. It's like, oh man, they can't catch a break
Yeah.
on that. But they're trying to respond to it in a long way.
Exactly. And
Right.
you do make a good point. Like, I do need to be a little more of a conscious consumer sometimes to realize, that when I place my order, and granted, you typically get the whole, like, this is how long it's going to take for you to get your order. Although I feel like that tends to like go back and forth and fluctuate all over the place. And there's nothing like watching your DoorDasher on the little map and seeing them go and deliver to 5 other places before they come to you. And like, great, I can't wait for my food to be the last one delivered, you know.
Oh, wait, why am I not the first stop along the way?
Exactly. That's what I get for being the farthest away, I guess, from all the restaurants.
But on that point, the technology, because I think it feels like on DoorDash, there is that filter, that throttle, like if I'm trying to order and it says, look, this is going to take 60 minutes or 90 minutes. Oh, cancel order, go on to someone else that might be able to handle that. And I've seen restaurants, that utilize that. I think there's a throttle button that they can like pause orders for a little while, so that they can do a little bit of a catch up. We have a local restaurant called Skyline Chili that I think they enabled, Uber Eats or something like that, but they have the ability to throttle it because if they're just slammed, they can't, turn it off.
Right.
And I've heard them say, turn it off. We can't do it right now. But anyway. Yeah.
Okay. But that does take, to your point earlier, Dean, that does take technology integration. That does take somebody to help them get that integrated with their point of sale and their kitchen management system. Because if it's not integrated and it's on a tablet, they really have the throttle is on or off. Like there is no predictive analytics of how many orders are in the kitchen. These third-party delivery companies are tech companies first, really. And so they're getting to a place where they start to see what the orders are looking like coming in and out of the properties. And they're starting to use predictive analytics, not, hey, this chili place, Skyline Chili, tells you it's going to be 20 minutes, but DoorDash knows really it's going to be 26 minutes to get the food because they've seen it come in and out and they've watched the DoorDashers sit there and wait for 6 minutes. They've got to figure out how to be more efficient. When you've got the tech integrated to integrate with the kitchen management system and the point of sale, that makes it easier for these tech companies to really deliver on the guest experience that you guys are talking about.
Yeah, nice.
Very good point. Well, then let's get into a little bit of, like I said, without giving away your secret sauce, let's talk a little bit about how CBS, approaches when it comes to the marketing and to going out and pitching solutions and positioning yourselves. Where do you find differentiators? What helps you kind of overcome the complacency, the competition, the folks that are just saying, hey, I don't know this is the right time for me to do this, or I've already got this thing that I've been using forever, or I've got 6 other companies that are beating on my door and trying to tell me the same thing as you. How do you differentiate and stand out from that?
So the first thing I would say, and James and I talked about this on a previous podcast, I don't know, maybe a year ago. The biggest thing for us is understanding who our customer is and who's our customer avatar, and talking to the right customer, whether that be the person inside the brand or being able to have a value proposition that meets the customer that we're looking for. And I think all too often when I talk with VARs that are out there, they will take $1 from anybody that will give it to them. They don't really understand who their core customer is. And so because they don't understand who their core customer is, their value proposition is weaker because they just become part of the Me Too, I can do everything that everybody else does, rather than differentiating yourself and saying, this is what makes us special. This is what, and I would say, harken it back to the restaurants. If you guys were to think about those same things, why do you go to XYZ restaurant? I promise you, if I said Cheesecake Factory, either you guys could come up with 2 items that you order at Cheesecake Factory every single time, and you go, okay, this is what I'm going to order from Cheesecake Factory. If I, go down to the next brand, if I'm going to Chili's, if I'm going to Applebee's, what are those things that you're going to order? And when you tell your kids or you tell your wife, hey, do you want to go to Cheesecake Factory? She thinks in her head, do I want chicken Madeira or do I want the Chinese chicken salad? And if I don't want one of those 2 things, then I'm not going to go there. Us as VARs, we need to have that same value proposition that says, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is why we do it. And so the second piece that I would say is all too often brands want to talk about themselves. All too often VARs want to talk about themselves rather than talking about the customer. And what does the customer need? And so a number of years ago, I was introduced to to Donald Miller in the Story Brand Workshop. I don't know if you guys are familiar with story branding, but he's an author and runs a marketing agency in Nashville. But he's got this whole 7-part framework that's really all about making the customer the hero of the story. You're not the hero of the story. And if you look at people's websites, if you look at people's marketing, if you look at people's messaging, it's all about me, feature, function. It's not, let me show you. But then you go out to these consumer brands, you hardly ever see on a Bud Light commercial, Bud Light, you see a lady, laying on the beach, or you see a dude playing football, or you see friends celebrating together, because it's all about the consumer, not about the quality of how good Bud Light is or whatever. And so those would be the two things that I would say are critical: is understand who your customer is, and then make them the hero of the story by giving them messaging, giving them branding, understanding what their needs are at a base level and how you can help them accomplish them. That's what differentiates what and how we do our marketing and how we do our sales, and how we really engage with our customers.
Bingo. I mean, when we talk about marketing that we help our customers out with, right, through our appware solutions and user demand generation, it's all about getting niche on that and trying to boil it down. So everything that he just talked about, focus, differentiation, having a story around that, that is exactly how you can market yourself and make a difference in the marketplace, is by doing some of those very simple techniques, plus a little selling 101 that he threw in there, right. About getting to understand your customer and it's more about them than you, and those types of things in solution selling. We talk about it as resellers all the time, but you actually have to live it and do it and put it into action. And marketing can obviously be that first step a lot of times.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned earlier, Jeremy, the idea that some of the software companies out there that may not be able to back up their service or their offerings or the expectations that they set. And we've come across that when we've had some folks approach us about marketing, and we'll ask about their, especially as it happens a lot in POS, where we'll ask about, like, what's the differentiator of your marketing, like, or of your product compared to other POS that are out there. And ultimately, we kind of find out eventually, like, oh, this POS is just a standard POS that can be used in dozens of different places, but we're going to target this market and just shoehorn it in there and give it a tweak of a name and say, here's some things that it can do for that particular market. Like, that's all well and good, but that doesn't differentiate anything. You are just another POS as far as anyone who reads up on you or comes to you is concerned. And again, if you're able to go to somebody and say, okay, I'm a POS provider for hardware retail stores. Maybe you have a couple other brands you do too, but there's a big message you can say, like, I have hardware POS. I call it, like, I don't know, nails POS or something like that, like, and you're able to say, like, here's the things that we do in our POS that are specific to hardware stores, specific item SKU tracking, specific, inventory management piece of, or whatever it may be, specifics about, weight and, whatever it might be. But if there's ways that you can tell somebody and say, hey, I know you, I know your business, I know what you struggle with, I know what a run-of-the-mill POS system does and doesn't do for you. Here's what I'm going to do for you with mine, because it's about you. Just exactly what you said. You are the star of the show. This is all about you. So I love that.
Well, and I guess I'll add to that. 25 years ago, when I started with the organization, we would sell point of sale to lots of different verticals. We would sell to grocery stores. We would sell to liquor stores. We would sell to, and it was, 25 years ago, it was mostly cash registers and, some basic point of sale functionality. But a number of years ago, we started both seeing traction, and quite frankly, and you can tell by my waistline, I enjoy going out to eat at restaurants. And so I preferred that vertical. And so we my father, who was the founder and the founder of the organization, said, let's go just focus, and we're going to burn the ships, and all we're going to do is go after restaurants, because we're going to become the best in the world at restaurants. And even some of our marketing tactics and we branded, cruise ship POS and nightclub POS and to exactly what you're talking about. And if you were to go to cruiseshippos.com, it's going to direct you back to our North Star site, because we know that we do really well with Norwegian Cruise Lines, and we're trying to get into that vertical. And so we've created a microsite that really redirects you back to the main, has some marketing and specific branding specific to that vertical. Didn't cost us but a few small dollars to put together some graphics and get a couple of value statements on that, and then it directs you back to the main site. But I actually heard Mark say this years ago, is the riches are in the niches, and I know you guys believe that to that level. And I think the more specific you can get to talk that value proposition, the better off the VARs will be. Because if you walk in with a Me Too solution, not only is it going to you're not going to get as much traction, but you're also not going to be able to make it as profitable. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to monetize that account as much, because you're not as specialized as you might be otherwise.
That's it. I mean, if you can tell a story that you specialize in Mexican restaurants or whatever, you or Italian restaurants, and build a differentiating value around that, even if you supply other restaurants, that's cool. But you have to have the story, and you have to live in the customer's shoes, understand what they're going through, have a value proposition that matches that. You can then differentiate yourself, number one, and then monetize that differentiation, number two, because they will see that, they being your potential prospects will see the value in that, if the value is truly there, not just veiled, not just, it's got to be meaningful stuff that you're doing there, but because people can sniff that out as well. But that's the way to attack it.
Yep, I agree. So then, what about the free, and I'm putting my quote fingers up
full
again
air quotes
here.
again.
Yeah, air quotes, the free POS systems, because you'll come across some of these. It might be a software provider who says, sign up with us, our software is free, and you just have to buy some hardware with it, or payment processor, like, hey, sign on with us and we'll give you the whole POS system for free right along with it. But, what do you have to say about those when because I'm sure you have customers that you go out and you're talking to and they say, oh, well, I just came across this free system I can get as long as I just sign up with this payment processor, or as long as I, buy this cash drawer or something. What do you have to say to those?
So I will say we run into it less and less as time goes on, because I think there's been a lot of education about it out there. But and back to our niche market, we try and go up market to those people that have kind of either been burned by those free POSs before, or they're not there. But what I tell our sales team, or anybody that kind of comes to me and is trying to understand the free POS market, is clearly nothing is free in this world. They've got to figure out how to monetize it somehow. And so how are they monetizing it, and getting to the bottom line of what does it look like? What is the TCO over 3 and 5 years, total cost of ownership? We've got TCO calculators. If you put in, you put in XPOS, and I'm not going to use brand names because it doesn't add any value to the conversation. But if I put in XYZ point of sale, what is it going to look like over 3 and 5 years at this rate, at your transaction volume? The majority of them are tied to some form of credit card processing, because they're monetizing it through that credit card processing. And so looking at it and saying, what is this? What does your business need? And how do we help show you that with this solution, over 3 years, you might pay more upfront, but over 3 years and over 5 years, you're going to have a significantly larger cost savings and/or a revenue increase based on what this TCO calculator is that we've built, to show them that. And 99 times out of 100, you get the customer that says, I get it. I will say that we lost to a free POS recently on a relatively large chain, relatively unsophisticated buyer, and a large chain being 130, 140 restaurants, all franchise. And so because it was all franchise, it turned into this conversation of, I'm a franchisor and I don't really want to fight with them to have to spend 10 grand on your point of sale. You've got to do this. And we chalked it up to, hey, their contract's 36 months. Guess what? In 30 months, we'll be talking to them again, because their contract will be ending. And they're going to come back and realize that free POS wasn't really free. And hopefully they're not so ingrained in that company and in that culture that we can win them back with kind of that secondary value proposition that we talked about.
I love that particular attitude of understanding, like, look, you're doing this now. I'm not going to burn a bridge here. I'm not going to be upset that you chose this free POS. I'm just going to make note that when the time is coming, I'm going to come back at some point and have a chat with you, and I'm curious, how it's going for you. And I think you could even position it like that. You could mention that in the conversation, be like, hey, that's fine. Sorry, we didn't get your business. But, I would love to check back in with you sometime and find out how things are going with this particular solution that you chose. Yeah. There's no reason you can't do that. And I think if you have that kind of positive attitude of like, hey, I lost this time, but I'm still going to try to win your business in the future. I'll see you in, like you said, 30 months and come back and have a conversation about that, because you probably know in the back of your mind, you're probably not going to be happy when I show back up again. There's going to be things that you're not happy about. Yeah.
Well, and it's good to hear Jeremy saying that maybe that's kind of diminishing a little bit, this free POS out there, because look, restaurateurs are business savvy people. They understand bottom lines, they understand profits, and maybe you can fool them once, kind of a thing, but I don't think that that's a long-term strategy, and they understand the economics around running their business very, very well. Yep. So, so hopefully that'll diminish, because at the end of the road, there is no free lunch, right? And when we all know these things, it's not free. Somebody's paying for it somewhere.
Exactly. Well, hey, let's wrap up this main conversation with a quick, and again, a lot of a lot of trends, a lot of things have happened over the last couple of years now that obviously have shaken up everything about POS. But are there any, Jeremy, that you're watching right now that you still think are to come, that we're not quite there yet, or are starting to slowly evolve and happen, that you think might shake things up over the next few years?
I think over the next few years, there's three main things that I would say that are going to continue to proliferate the restaurant tech vertical, and quite frankly, all tech verticals as it relates to retail, is the adoption of mobile and being mobile. Whether that mobile is the staff member in a retail outlet or a restaurant being tableside, or walking around the store with you and being able to do lookups on inventory or whatnot. And I know you guys live that world every day at BlueStar. So I think that's something that is absolutely going to continue to proliferate. Hardware manufacturers continue to come out with new devices, allow you the opportunity to do that. The second is, and I brought it up earlier, I think understanding who your consumer is and being able to use the data that they give you now to be able to speak to them more relevantly. Right now, today, restaurants don't speak to us the way that Amazon and Google speak to us and Facebook speak to us. I promise you, your Google feed and your Amazon feed and is very different than your wife's, because they know who's logged in, they know what your wife is shopping for, they know what you're shopping for, and they know when you need it, why you need it. And restaurants, don't do that today. That they don't do that today. And I think that whether it's machine learning or AI and all of that is going to become something over the next 3 to 5 years that everyone is going to, again, come to expect. And then the last, you guys may have seen the press this week, but I think robotics is going to really make a push. You talked about the labor problems. Buffalo Wild Wings just earlier this week announced that they now have a robotic fryer, to where, McDonald's has been doing it for a while, and some of these big guys. And so as these big guys adopt it and figure it out, it's going to come down to the mid and lower tier market. And so I think those are three things that will continue to influence what's going on within the retail and restaurant space and grocery space, for that matter, every day. And I think it's going to just continue to accelerate. Moore's law with processing is going to be that way. And I quite frankly think the same thing is going to happen as it relates to these kinds of tech adoption.
Yeah, let's dive a little bit on the robot side there, because we always like to get geeky on robots
right,
here.
yeah.
So it's that cobot technology, I think, that we're starting to see in the back of the house, where maybe the robots are going to be used for what I'll call the mundane task, the fryer. Did you say it's a fryer robot that they're rolling out?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Buffalo Wild Wings is testing, drop the wings, drop the fries into the fryer.
Yep.
They figure out where they are, they shake them up, and they pull them out.
Yep. Use the human resources on how, what it looks like before it hits the customer, or putting it together and doing those types of things. That's really interesting. I also read some articles, even front of house, doing table cleaning and stuff like that. Maybe you would see some automation there so that the servers can spend a little bit more time on the customer experience and the human interaction, and less time on, sanitizing and those types of things. So maybe we'll see some robotics front of house too. You think, Jeremy?
Absolutely. And I think some of those mundane tasks of whether it be cleaning or it be even, one of the pieces of AI that we've been playing with a little bit is it solves kind of the problem that we talked about earlier with your food quality, is even robotics and machine learning and cameras, to make sure that when you said I wanted buffalo wings with ranch, that they didn't put blue cheese or they didn't put Italian dressing into your box. That's this idea that food quality is going to use robotics to figure those things out, and AI and machine learning and these computers figuring out where guests are and how long they're staying. That's another piece of tech that we've been playing with, is to figure out who's coming in the door, when are they coming in the door. Back to the conversation about how do you staff and when do you staff. But I wholeheartedly believe that it will hit the front of the house, and I think that it'll be more autonomous. That the systems that are deployed to these retail establishments are going to say, there's a spill on aisle 3 before somebody comes to tell the front of the grocery store that there's a spill on aisle 3. They're going to see it. They're going to alert a staff member to go clean this up instantly before it has to impact the guest experience.
Yeah, I like where you're going there, because I'm going to dive a little bit on one of the fails that I think does happen with door dashing or deliveries to home, is accuracy of your order. So, yes, of course, we're all door dashing, we're all doing Uber Eats, but I have to, not to throw a complaint on there, but I feel like 4 out of the last 5 orders that I've done, they've missed something. Yep. So quality control. And then I was looking,
and you can't just go walking back up to a counter and complain.
You can't log onto the app and say, hey, they gave me Italian instead of ranch dressing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Well, and it is 100%. The last 3 customer conferences I've been to, now that we're actually able to travel again, people actually want to see in person. I've gone to 3 customer conferences. It was the number one thing that they were trying to figure out within these brands. 2 casual dining brands and 1 fast casual brand. Unequivocally, number one topic that they were talking about is how do we ensure the food quality that goes out the door? Because you can't fix the guest when it gets delivered to their house. To what you just said, Dean.
Yep.
The ranch versus Italian, or napkins didn't show up, or forks and knives didn't show up when it got delivered to your office or to some park where you're supposed to be having a picnic with your wife. If you don't have forks and knives, I mean, I literally ate some food with my hands one time because they didn't deliver the forks and knives with it when I got it for takeout. It was ridiculous. It was a burrito enchilada style, and I said to my wife, I said, this is going to be the messiest burrito I've ever eaten because they didn't deliver forks and knives, but I was 10 minutes away from the restaurant. I wasn't going to drive back to the market or to the restaurant to go get this food. I mean, by that point, it would have been cold and disgusting. So it is the number one thing. And so trying to figure out how to do that quality check, how to make sure that the right items are in the bag. They're trying to take some drive-through technology. I mean, that's one of the things that I know everybody's dealing with is how do I get more capacity through my drive-through? You guys have seen Chick-fil-A and all these people adopt the 2-lane drive-throughs, but I think some of these large brands that have drive-through have looked at these pieces of technology that says there should be 4 items in the bag, and what are they, and whatnot. But I do think that tech is going to play a huge part in figuring that out for these restaurant brands coming into the future.
I would agree with that. I think that if somebody can figure out that puzzle, the little quality control station or whatever it looks like, I don't know, but before it goes out the door, it's got to go by this AI thingamabob that's going to quality check it. And I thought you guys were getting really close to it, Jeremy, because I'm on the CBS site. I love your recipe viewer, by the way, which I don't know if that's holistically unique to you, but it's the first time I've ever seen something like this. So let's talk a little bit about some of the technology that's happened back in a house too. This is a back of house kind of solution where you, if I understand it correctly, can bring continuity to recipes or how things are done amongst a chain. So if there's like a slight tweak to a recipe or something new is rolling out, how do I roll that out to 5 different stores, 10 different stores, 100 different stores? You can use something like this. I mean, yes, I worked in restaurants, coming up through high school and college and whatnot, and I can remember it was a pizzeria, and it was rare that there would be changes, but they did happen.
Right.
Oh no, we're making the hoagie this way now, and then we'd have to go to training, and there's this whole thing around it, but as opposed to something like this. So even back of house, right, Jeremy, there's technology advances, as we were just talking about the AI quality check, maybe someday, but you guys are on top of it too with the recipe viewer.
Yeah, no, and Recipe Viewer was really a solution that was originated with a conversation back to how do we sell and how do we engage with our customers. We were having a meeting with the CIO of the Cheesecake Factory when there were 40 stores. They happen to be a client of ours. There were 40 stores. They're now over 200 locations nationwide, and now they've hit 6 different countries outside of the U.S. But they had a challenge where they had a recipe book, and if any of you guys have been to the Cheesecake Factory, you know that their menu is 40 pages long, and they've got 250 menu items. And so, how do I create consistency across an entire country or across the entire world for this matter? Because everything that they do is made in-house. It's scratch kitchens, and so they had a situation where every morning the cooks would go to the safe and check the recipe book out, and they'd sit in their station and make the recipes. And the CIO came to us and said, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm going to go deploy this solution. And over a weekend, we built a prototype of Recipe Viewer. And ultimately, that's what launched it, because they had 40 stores and they were having problems where a chef had stolen the recipe book. He had stolen the recipe book and go try to start, the Cheesecake Factory Light, his own brand of it, using their recipes that they had spent tens of thousands of dollars to build. We've got another brand down here in Texas, the Pappas Restaurant Group, very similar story. Pappasitas had somebody took a recipe book from them, and so it's secure behind a secure portal. But you also allow them to, at a moment's notice, go change a recipe. You've got the spinach scare. A couple weeks ago we had the onion salmonella thing. They can change the recipe on the fly across all 250 stores in an instant, and everybody's now updated. And no different than if I were to ask you guys 20 years ago, how many phone numbers did you remember? Chances are you probably had 10 or 15 phone numbers you remember. Now, if I ask you if you even know your kid's phone number or your wife's phone number, chances are you might have to think about it for a little bit, because you can look it up. And once we deployed Recipe Viewer and you didn't have to remember it, the consistency went up almost instantaneously, because now instead of remembering how many pepperoni you're supposed to be on, it's 12 or 13. Instead of having to remember it, you just look up at the screen and it's right there in your face to be able to deploy those things. And so between security, consistency, and scalability. Again, I get on my soapbox here for a little bit, but huge to create that consistency, and it solves a real business challenge of how do I create consistency across a chain to make sure that everybody's doing it the same way. Lastly is turnover. Turnover is typically over 100% within a restaurant brand. And cooks are the hardest right now. I mean, I've heard of some of our customers that have given $20,000 bonuses to get cooks to come in. $20,000 to somebody that's making 50 grand, like just to have them come work at their brand because they can't even hire staff. You've got this consistent turnover, and so now how do you train these people and get them up to speed almost instantaneously? There's very little training because if you can read and you can look at pictures, you can use Recipe Viewer.
So you need to know your tech stack, right?
Definitely.
You need to know what's out there. It's not just front of house, which is I know where we began the conversation around POS. Sorry to diverge a little bit because the back of house is important too. And I just think as solution resellers, which our customer base is, you have to know what's going on in the marketplace and the need for these types of technologies Jeremy's talked about. And thank you for that. I mean, it's some brilliant things like Recipe Viewer. Just to me, it's like duh, no brainer. Yeah. And if I was a reseller, I would be like, I'd be pretty excited about that and go and talking to my customers about something like that and trying to partner up with NorthStar and getting that software. But anyway,
that is some fantastic technology. All it made me think of is like there's some chef out there with running around the recipe book opening up cheesecake industry or something. I don't know, like
oh, but that's a huge
cafe.
Yeah, there you go.
Cheesecake cafe, and they've got all of their recipes doing this, trying to do the same thing that they were doing.
Huge issue in the restaurant business. I'm just going to steal the secret sauce, literally the secret sauce recipe, and go open my own down the road.
Exactly. Well, I'll wrap up this part of the conversation with a quick couple stats here because, we've talked mostly about restaurants, but obviously, retail in general benefits from POS. Well, part of that same stats that I mentioned at the very beginning, it was from an article on Finances Online. They did a poll for 2020 poll for North American retailers about top POS priorities. Number one at 59% was omni-channel capabilities integration, then improve existing POS, unified e-commerce platform, mobile POS, POS upgrade or replacement, and hardware upgrade at 30%. So that's all the top priorities right there. I feel like that's
omni-channel's number one.
Omni-channel's number one, and again, for general retail that makes sense. Like they understand there's a huge need there to to figure out how to build the experience, the customer experience of shopping where you want, how you want, when you want, and having the seamless experience no matter where you are. So I think that's gonna be one of the big trends that keeps growing.
It continues on, and even on the technology side. Jeremy, we're just gonna have you back, man, because we got to dive into some of these other topics that you just threw. You can't throw stats at the end of the podcast like this because I want to chew on that for a little bit.
I wanted to just acknowledge the general retail because we've talked a lot about restaurant today, but you're right. I think we could easily go down that rabbit hole in another episode too. So maybe it's a sneak preview for 2022 episode.
And what's up with QR codes? We need Jeremy's takes on QR codes. We need a lot of stuff. Yeah. Anyway.
I don't know if you knew it or not. You may be a recurring guest now. So
I'm happy to, and I'd love to have you on my show as well. I think it'd be fun to sit and talk about what you guys see from the other side because the channel is always interesting. They're always interesting as to how they're solving it. You've got some unique resellers out there. I know you guys do because I get a chance to talk with them when I attend your guys' events, and you guys have got some really cool people that do some really cool stuff out there to help people run their business better.
That's awesome. Cool. The ecosystem is very important, no doubt.
All right, well, hey, before we wrap things up with our recurring segments, I want to quickly thank, as always, our sponsors, Elo, Epson, Honeywell, and Zebra. Thank you very much for your support of the show. We couldn't do it without you. Hey, as always, if you like the show, like us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or any podcast platform of your choice, if there's an option to give us a review, a rating of some sort, please do that.
Tell a friend about
it. Yes. Share an episode. And by all means, let us know what you like about the show, what you're interested in hearing about, what you don't like too. We're happy to take some criticism if need be. You can find us, as always, on Twitter at TEConnectPod. You can email us, TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. Okay, let's wrap things up here. The value of the VAR segment here, I feel like is kind of a no-brainer because this whole thing has all been about the idea of how to differentiate yourself and bring value.
Yes.
But, Jeremy, is there one or two quick, short, simple takeaways for someone who maybe their attention waned a little bit throughout the episode and they just want to know, like, what can I do right now? What are one or two things that you think they can do right now to stand out in the POS market?
I mean, to me, it's the biggest thing is understanding where your customers are at and where they're going and how do you serve their purposes how do you identify a problem and identify a problem before they even know they have it and solve it for them and become the hero of the story, for them, and help them make more money. But I think way too often, and you said it earlier in kind of some of the dialogue is I think way too many VARs got complacent as it relates to their customer engagement, and they need to really understand what those customers are looking for and make sure they go out and find it. The other thing I would say to all VARs is stop being so scared that somebody else is going to steal your customer. If you're delivering the value, it's got to be my solution. No, go partner with other people. You talked about it, Dean, earlier. We've partnered with hundreds of different brands out there, but we still own the customer relationship, and allowing them to solve the problem for the customer. You still become, you might make a nickel on a dollar or 10 cents on the dollar on it, but at least you've solved this customer's problem, because if you don't solve it for them, they're going to solve it for themselves. And I think as a VAR, your job is to go figure out what those things are. So stop being so scared that somebody else is going to get into your customer and steal them. Go solve their problem with that, for them, maybe through a third party, maybe through some partnership that you've built. But I think that way too many VARs, when I listen to them talk about these things, they get scared about these things because they want to own 100% of the tech stack. They want to own 100% of the value stack, and it's not realistic in this day and age, in my mind.
Man, brilliant! Boom, hit it out, nailed it, as they say. That is a great takeaway, because again, when I went on the CBS Insight, it's like partnership is just a part of their ecosystem. I love resellers that do that, because they understand the value that is the relationship that you have with your customer. But be a good solution provider by understanding all the things, just some of the things that we touched on here today, and you need to have that in your tech stack or your value stack or whatever you want to call it. But the only way that you're going to get there is through partnering. You have to understand that, because gone are the days of a very simple cash register with whatever, just an electronic cash drawer. That's gone. You have to have partners to be able to enable your customers to do all the things that they need to be able to do to stay relevant as well.
Yep,
yeah,
I completely
it's
agree.
Really good.
To piggyback quickly on Jeremy's comment there, I think at the end of the day, you want to be the first person that people call when they have a need in whatever tech is in their environment. If you're that first person they call, because they know you're the person that will, whether you're getting the job done yourself or you have a partner that can help them get the job done, you want to be that first call. That's how you keep that business. That's how you get away from that mentality of, I'm afraid if I introduce them to somebody, then they're going to start relying on them all the time. No, when they recognize you as the person that can put them in touch with the person that they need to work with, and you're all working together on a project together, there's so much value in that I think that's where you get past that mentality of, I got to pull all my business in and wrap my arms around it, hold it tightly, put a drawbridge and a moat around it or whatever. No one's allowed in. It just doesn't work anymore. I'm sorry. We don't live in that world where you can just do it all by yourself.
Drawbridges and moats are gone.
That's right. We filled
them
them
in the medieval era. Yeah.
I'd say he's standing up on the top of the castle wall with the with an arrow on fire, trying to shoot people down and trying to cross the bridge, huh?
Exactly.
We're gonna pour this hot tar on you.
That's right. Yeah. I'll get you. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, let's wrap up with our favorite segment, What's Tech Connecting with You? This is where we get to talk about something in the world of science, technology, innovation that has caught our eyes, got our attention lately. Jeremy, I'll let you start. What's Tech Connecting with you right now?
I alluded to it earlier in the conversation. I think this whole idea of cameras and how much they can do to figure out what's going on within the world is huge. The technology continues to get smaller, continues to get faster. Understanding that, and it's not just for security, it's for really what's happening within human movement and all of those kind of things I think is a huge piece that I think is going to solve some problems as time goes on. I think it's going to solve that food quality problem that we talked about earlier. It's going to solve some of the staffing issues, some of the people that might not be necessarily so efficient. I mean, when you used to do time and motion studies, you'd have somebody stand there with a stopwatch to figure out how long is it taking to cook this ribeye steak. I think cameras are going to be able to do that at some point and allow us to be more efficient as human beings, which I wonder at times if that's even a good thing, but I do believe that technology is really gonna innovate and change the way that the world operates through this camera technology.
If used properly, it can. I agree with you, and I think that as humanity will get there. It's not going to be this overlord, hopefully, that we see in some societies, but yes, if used properly, it can do a lot of good in the world. Yeah.
Dean, what's Tech Connecting with you?
Batteries. I'm going to go batteries. So here's the headlines.
It's a little low tech.
Well, It is low tech. You're right. I mean, the battery's been around forever, but battery technology is like
it's going places.
It's going places, dude, and it has to. So science demonstrates new battery chemistry using copper and cellulose nanofibers with up to 100 times more efficiency conductivity than current lithium-ion batteries. So, right, if we're going to have any success in some of the things that we're going to do, if you know, whether it's you want to get off the grid and have your own solar house with a battery and stuff like that, or whether it's you want more life on your cell phone or whatever it is. I mean, batteries are, and battery technology, I think, is one of those things that I'm just interested in because it seems to be advancing very, very quickly. And it appears as though they have figured out a way to use some natural fibers. By the way, some of this is tree parts, fibers from trees that they're using in this when meshed with copper to have this again, this battery technology that is much more efficient at conducting.
Right.
And it solves some of the issues that we're having with lithium-ion batteries, and if they overheat, and some of the byproducts of using that technology and what it can do. This is going to table that or thwart that completely. So anyway, battery technology to me continues to be interesting. I would imagine 5-10 years from now, it won't be unrealistic to have batteries that can last way longer and with much more power than we have today to power your house, to power your phone, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And if you were, like I said, if you're one of those guys or gals that wants to get off the grid, maybe you can get there with a battery powered house someday.
There you go. I have a feeling there's one or two companies that are going to just make some serious bank.
Right.
By perfecting the battery and figuring out the next evolution of the battery.
Exactly.
There's a couple companies out there, and I don't know who they are yet. There's a lot of them, I'm sure, vying for it. But there's going to be, like you said, give us like another decade or so, and there will be some household names in batteries that we'd be surprised, or maybe at least household within the tech industry.
Or maybe Duracell buys them. I don't know.
Well, that's true. That's a good point, yeah.
Or the Energizer Bunny is going to buy up any of these types of things. But I continue to be fascinated by battery technology. So what's TEConnecting with you, my man?
All right, so I'm always fascinated by what's happening in the world of astronomy and what's new out in space from time to time. So here's a cool headline that came across a couple days ago. Astronomers may have spotted the first known exoplanet in another galaxy.
Wait, exoplanet?
Well, meaning just
not here,
right? Okay. So meaning not in the Milky Way, which this was not something I was not aware of. But like we had not officially, and granted, we still technically haven't officially, decided or been able to say yes, there is a planet in another planet or planets in other galaxies beyond the Milky Way.
Okay.
I think people think about it like, because we've talked about it, I think we've discovered well over like, I don't know, 400 or something. I think they said it's somewhere 4,800. My bad. 4,800 planets, more than 4,800
in the Milky Way.
In the Milky Way galaxy.
Okay, got it.
And our massive galaxy. But
we're just one of whatever billions of a galaxy.
And there's plenty of other galaxies out there that we're able to see, but we don't have quite the ability to see that closely to identify planets. Well, the scientists think they have actually identified one, and of course they've given it a fun name, M51ULS1b. It's in the Whirlpool Galaxy, as it's called, and it apparently is potentially moving around a massive star and a dead star that are side by side, that are kind of little binary type thing. And apparently the way they do this is because of that dead star, which kind of has turned into essentially something akin to a black hole, is siphoning off energy off of the big star and creating some X-rays that are given off. And we're able to always look and see what's there, and we can see those X-rays that are coming off. But a lot of times, apparently, these little small dead X-ray stars or whatever are giving off enough energy, but are also small enough that if something big enough can pass in front of it,
there it is.
It gets blocked for a time.
It's a shadow.
And we kind of identify that happening.
X-ray shadow.
Apparently that happened recently, and some folks were able to identify, hey, something big seemed to pass in the way in front of this particular X-ray star and block that feed for a little bit of time. Now, there's skeptics that are like, well, there's just a lot of coincidences involved in this. It may not really be it.
Yeah, maybe it was a dust particle.
Yeah, but it's still, it's still some good potential evidence. And here's the thing. I think it's safe to assume that there are other galaxies have planets as well as ours. I mean, why would it just be our galaxy and no others whatsoever? It's always been safe to assume that, but now it seems like, and this is 28 million light years from Earth.
Oh
that
my
we know there's
Lord.
At least potentially another planet out there.
See how you see that far, but okay. All right.
So there you go.
That's a good one.
Yeah. All right. Jeremy, Julian, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate having you on the show.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
Definitely. And hey, until next time, get down off of your castle walls, let some people in.
Partner up.
Yeah, partner up, and please stay connected. One of ELO's most popular product lines for self-service, point-of-sale, industrial control, visitor management, and more just got better with the release of the iSeries 4, the next level of awesome. Available in 10, 15, and 22-inch sizes, ELO's iSeries offers a powerful, commercial-grade interactive platform complete with full HD 10-touch display, flexible Android 10 OS, and enhanced CPU performance with your choice of Qualcomm or Rockchip processor options. Start changing the way customers and employees interact by deploying a new generation of interactive technologies that provide seamless integration, effortless provisioning, and simplified device management via EloView or your preferred management tools. To learn more, check out the link in the show notes or contact your BlueStar ELO representative. Now more than ever, organizations are requiring sophisticated access control solutions. Evolus, the world's leading direct-to-card printer manufacturer, has solutions to fit any card-related access control scenario. Their open SDK is perfect for custom applications, and their 7 different encoding options cover any card requirement in the marketplace, from basic mag encoding to complex UHF. Whether your customer's access control requirement includes contact or contactless, simple ID cards, multi-purpose cards, or something else, Evolus has you covered with their newly expanded range of self-service kiosk printers. If you're an ISV or system integrator in the access control arena, contact your BlueStar rep today to identify with Evolus. In today's hyper-competitive vertical markets, VARs face numerous challenges, from reduced IT budgets to ever-evolving digital trends and the economic impacts of disruptions to supply chain. With an infrastructure supporting the broader economy, developing a strategic plan for your business has never been more daunting. Zebra offers some help with the new ebook called Burgeoning Vertical Markets: How VARs Can Capitalize in the New Normal. It identifies new and ongoing pain points and challenges within verticals like healthcare, retail, and warehousing distribution, while also revealing opportunities for significant long-term revenue. To download your copy, check out the link in the show notes or go to the TEConnectportal.com, that's TEConnectportal.com, and search for Vertical.